I love the first arc of The Promised Neverland. In fact, it's one of my favorite opening arcs in all of fiction. It sucked me into its world and kept me there for 37 chapters, reading page after page with bated breath. There are the obvious things like the wonderful artwork which is apparent from the opening moments. The detailed backgrounds, expressive and varied character designs, expertly considered panel layouts and composition, all of it adding up to create a beautiful presentation. And that's without even getting into the plot and characters that make up this world, and that's just chef's kiss. See, Emma spent her whole life at an orphanage. However, all the orphans here form a tight-knit family with a loving mother who looks after them until the day they're adopted out. Or, well, that's how it's supposed to go, until Emma and her friend Norman discover that these kids are nothing more than grass-fed, free-run kiddos.
We've made another big change at A&W to grass-fed beef. What does that mean, ranchers?
So yeah, they're being raised as food for demons. From here, Emma and Norman need to come up with an escape plan and save their skins. Immediately, the manga is about mind games rather than action. The children need to outsmart their mother if they want to escape and survive. The characters are the real reason these mind games shine. First, there are the three main characters in this arc: Emma, Ray, and Norman. Each of them has a distinct but understandable position. Emma is the optimistic idealist who wants to save all the children in the farm. This makes perfect sense. She spent her entire life, or at least almost all of it, with many of these kids. Leaving them behind simply isn't an option for her. Everything else might have been a lie, but her love for her family never was. Then there's Ray. Ray has known about the truth for a long time, but he kept it a secret and helped Mom. Why? Well, because he had no hope of escaping. He was just a child. Because of this, his story is tragic and heartbreaking. For years, he just stood by while his family was shipped out to be eaten. However, he waited for this moment, carefully requesting inconspicuous items from his mother that would eventually aid them in their escape. As you might expect, this makes him a careful realist and a brilliant planner. For this reason, he only wants to escape with Emma and Norman. Anyone else would just be a hindrance. And it's easy to see why he'd think this. They don't know what the outside world is like. They don't even know how well they'll be able to survive. Never mind how things will go with a bunch of even younger children. Meanwhile, Norman acts as a bridge between these characters. He recognizes that Ray's plan to leave everyone else behind has higher odds of working, but he still sides with Emma and works to convince Ray that this is feasible, that they can save every single child. Basically, he also wants to save his whole family and will do whatever necessary to make that possible. But he's still more careful than Emma, he still considers things more thoroughly, and he's more of a planner like Ray because of that. That's just one difference between him and Emma, but there are other ones. Mainly, he's willing to make sacrifices Emma would never be willing to accept. The balance between these characters is key to this opening arc. Each character's perspective and positions aren't only challenged by outside forces, they're challenged by other members of this team itself. It results in an incredibly engaging back and forth between these characters as they attempt to come up with a plan that will work. But it also means that sometimes these characters are working against each other's goals too. However, these aren't the only characters in play. No, as things move along, plans change and other characters become more important. Namely, the trio tells Dawn and Gilda, two other children in the farm, about what's going on and gain their cooperation and trust. Meanwhile, Isabella brings in Sister Crone to help keep track of the kids. From the kids' perspective, this is really unexpected. They didn't see this coming. But this is one of the ways The Promised Neverland's opening arc excels. Things might be unexpected from the characters' perspectives, but it feels reasonable that they could have seen it coming. I mean, of course Isabella might not be the only person like her. Of course there might be other people she can bring in to help. It's things like this that drive home the children's disadvantaged position without feeling like some sort of BS event that comes out of nowhere. The setting and the plot's adherence to the rules of that setting is one of the big reasons why the story unfolds in such a natural way. After all, this isn't some open space where new players or elements can be introduced at any time. No, this setting is small scale, with characters who are all trying to keep things secret to serve their own ends. This also creates a nice narrative reason for the kids and their enemies to be stuck together at almost all times, and it's always nice to see how the people involved in the mind game deal with one another on a personal level. All of this is to say that the elements in play during this arc are there from close to the beginning of the story. As events unfold, we just see what's done with each of these pieces. Not that many new ones are being thrown into the mix randomly. But these characters in this setting aren't only great because they work well in this battle of the brains. There's also that ever-important emotional component, where the characters' perspectives and lives matter. I probably don't need to spend any more time explaining how tragic the premise of the story is. Learning that your whole life is a lie, that your mother is merely raising you to be shipped out and eaten, and all this, that's a tough pill to swallow. Beyond that, there's also the emotional complexity of these children going up against a figure who seemed to care for them for so long. And as the plot unfolds, and as Isabella's perspective becomes clearer, well, things only get more complex. Because it's not like Isabella wanted to do this. No, she was a child just like them at one point, but then she was chosen to be a sister, and then a mother, and that was that. If she doesn't abide by the demon's rules, they'll simply kill her, and someone else will take her place. Of course, that doesn't justify her actions or anything like that, but her position certainly isn't easy. Basically, Isabella isn't some evil caricature. She doesn't take pleasure in hurting the kids. This isn't what she ever wanted. Because of her position, she also has an incredibly personal connection to the kids, a connection that makes her a more terrifying foe, but also a source of deep turmoil for all the children. In fact, she even wants Emma to survive and become a mother herself, which is part of what shapes Isabella into such a fantastic villain for Emma. Because if Isabella gets what she wants, Emma won't just lose her whole family. It'll be even worse than that. She would need to continue to perpetuate this cycle by becoming like her, or she'd have to die. All in all, the narrative conceit of this arc is brilliant, and the story does so much wonderful stuff with that concept. Essentially, the story makes a promise. The first arc will be about these kids in Gracefield Farm, about the mental battles between them and Isabella, and it sticks to that promise until the end of the arc. Nothing comes out of nowhere to save them. There's no random moment where they just somehow succeed by pure chance. There's always a carefully considered plan. They're always working with facts the audience knew about or at least could have reasonably figured would come into play. Even as it radically shifted gears, this made me feel like I could trust the story. The promise was made, and I was so excited to see where the story would go next. After the first arc, I knew that the Promised Neverland would change. I mean, these kids are going out into the big boy world, and that means there's a lot more at play. Now, at the very least, the way they make plans will be pretty different. After all, before, there were only so many elements they needed to consider and work with, but now they know little to nothing. Anything is possible. Fortunately, despite that change, things keep going strong. First, with Muchika and Sanju, the story slows down for a bit and focuses on morality over mind games. I mean, the children's biggest ally, the ones who really save them and help them on their journey in an important way, are demons who don't eat humans. Through them, the children also learn more about the world at large and about the threats they may come up against later. Emma also begins to consider how different humans really are from demons. After all, she also needs to take life to survive out in the wild right now. Basically, the simple human good, demons bad dynamic that's been set up is getting challenged. This serves as a nice change of pace while also showing that conflict with demons isn't as simple as it might have appeared. The demons aren't all bad. There are good demons out there. However, even if he's a short-term ally, Sanju represents a potential long-term threat. Because as we see right as the kids are leaving, he also wants to eat humans. But he won't do it until demons hunt humans again like the good old days. So even if the promise is broken, even if the farms are destroyed, well, there are still demons who will be out to get them. This arc is pretty strong, but still, in my mind, it acts as a bridge, getting the characters from Gracefield to the underground shelter at B0632. And once they get there, the story seems so promising. Here, the characters encounter their next threat, an unnamed man who for quite some time they'll just be calling Mr., otherwise known as one of the best characters in the story who somehow got ranked below frickin' Anna in the second Shonen Jump popularity poll for the Promised Neverland, and yes, I'm salty about that for some reason. It's just dumb, I don't get it. Either way though, Mr. doesn't want anything to do with the kids, and in a cruel twist of fate, it seems like, once again, a human might be their biggest threat. Similarly to Gracefield, a sanctuary has become a danger zone. From there, the only way for the kids to reason with him is through threats. They tell him that he needs to take Emma and Ray to a set of coordinates Minerva left for them, or else they'll blow up the entire shelter. Though he verbally agrees, he's really planning to let one of them die out in the wild. Most importantly though, he serves as a compelling reflection of Emma. There's this sense that at one time, he was a whole lot like her, that he cared for his family like she does, and that they were everything to him, but then somehow he lost them. And from there, he lost himself. So Emma's optimism and hope and her love for her family, it disgusts him because it reminds him of all he's lost and all that he'll never have again. This way, the manga has introduced another antagonistic force who challenges her ideals. After all, she doesn't want any other member of her family to die again. But this man serves as a sort of proof that that could happen, that she could lose everyone. His existence compels the reader to ask, what will happen if Emma loses the people she loves? And the coming arc will begin to challenge her. Because despite managing to connect with Mr., it's too late. She's kidnapped and taken to Goldie Pond. Here, the story naturally returns to another isolated, fairly small-scale setting. On top of that, after seeing demons like Mujika and Sanju, this serves as an exciting change of stakes. Sure, there are these demons that will help them, but there are other demons who are even more horrifying than the kids would have expected. Because these demons don't eat to satiate their hunger. Instead, they have fun hunting humans in their own private playground. In addition, this is the same place where Mr. lost everything, and now Emma has to find her own way out. However, the real star of this arc is Lewis, a demon with a particularly interesting perspective. After Emma saves some children he's attacking, he sells himself as a real threat to her ideals. See, Emma's smart enough to realize that Lewis will want to come after her and get a big bite of that juicy brain, so she tells these other kids she's saved to separate from her and go downwind. That way, the demons won't come after them and they won't be able to smell the kids either. But Lewis predicts this and kills 2 of those kids. Why? Well, because he wants Emma to suffer. That way she'll hate him and hopefully direct her malice his way and try to kill him. Because Lewis doesn't desire an easy hunt. He desires a genuine conflict with humans above all else, a conflict where his own life is on the line as well as theirs. When that happens, and only when that happens, he feels truly alive. As such, when Emma tries to reason with him, well, he has no interest in that. This way, he challenges Emma, a character who would like to avoid all conflict and keep her family safe, by showing her something. She can't have both. There will be conflict between humans and demons. She must fight. No, I don't want to pretend that everything here is perfect or that I loved every decision that was made. Early on, when Ray's in danger, he carves coordinates into a tree to tell Emma and the gang, hey, I'm heading over to the shelter. Of course, this is a super questionable decision since other people might find these coordinates and thus find them in their supposed safe haven. But I'll give the kid a break. He was panicked in an unknown place and about to die. My real problem with this is that he doesn't think about it later and go, oh no, I made a mistake. It's a little moment, but it feels out of character when he doesn't think about that sort of thing, since he's usually so careful and strategic. However, my main criticism is that in Goldie Pond, we don't know much about all these characters. They're mostly strangers to us, and then they're thrown into battle. As such, it was hard for me to feel all that invested in them when they were fighting, and it turned some of these otherwise exciting action scenes into a little bit of a, it's fine, I guess, whatever. Even so, there's a lot to love here, and I still really enjoy this section of the story. At the least, this part of the story is still incredibly promising. It seems like we're moving in interesting directions, and the conflict is escalating and stakes are being raised by challenging Emma and Ray on fundamental levels. All this stuff is to say that, sure, the story changed after its first arc, but that wasn't a bad thing. Instead, as the Promised Neverland's world expanded, I just wanted to learn more. I wanted to learn about this demon society, about how Emma would go about protecting her family in a world that was so out to get them, about what Mr. would do from here, about Minerva and the other humans and the Promise, and I could go on and on. You get the point. I was excited to see where this was going. In fact, this was gearing up to become one of my favorite series of all time. Maybe even Fullmetal Alchemist level for me, and I'm so obsessed with FMA that I want it to F my A. Either way, I felt certain. This was going to be great. If I were to take everything I hate in stories, boil it down, and make it into a manga arc, what I'd get would probably look a whole lot like the Coveted Dollar arc. It starts off fine enough. Emma manages to survive a near-fatal encounter with Lewis, while Yugo, who's now revealed his real name, connects with the kids. Also, a new villain is emerging in Minerva's brother, Peter Rattray. Beyond that, the team has a goal. Find the 7 walls where they'll be able to make a new promise with Mr. Scribbles. Once again, Minerva's books set them in the right direction. They need to go to Coveted Dollar. So they get there and Emma has a vision, but Mr. Scribbles tells them something interesting. He wants them to meet him through the entrance next time, whatever that means. So there's another riddle to realize, another code to crack, another puzzle to piece together. Nope. There's a time skip. A 1 year and 7 month time skip. We learn that Emma, Ray, Dawn, Gilda, Zack, and Violet have already been looking for months, but to no avail. They can't find the entrance. Right off the bat, I don't like this. Before this time skip, we'd been told that the characters had about 2 years left to make a new promise and save Phil and the rest of the children. So it would have been nice to see how the characters reacted to this taking so long. After all, that time ticking down, it represents a massive threat to their family and in particular, to Emma's ideal of saving all the children. The longer it takes to make a new promise, the more children die in the meantime. Any seemingly wasted moments, any mistake, could weigh on Emma's mind, making her a more complex character by showing her weakness and her worry, by using this as an opportunity to challenge her. But no, it's brushed aside like it's a matter of course. Later, we'll even learn that Andrew, one of Peter Rattray's confidants, has killed most of Minerva's allies, but I don't know, it would have been nice to see some of that. And then we learn that the kids have improved and studied, that Hugo and Lucas have been training them, that they've grown closer, and it's clear that even if Emma and the gang didn't reach their goal, a lot has happened during this time skip. Characters have developed, circumstances have changed, the enemy is closing in, and it's a real shame that we see almost none of that. This also frustrates me because this was the perfect opportunity to develop some of these other characters. Okay, so I didn't mention this till now, but I had some worries about all these kids escaping from the farm because, well, we don't know who many of them are. That way it might get kinda hard to care about them, or to even keep track of them. And they could all turn into an amorphous blob of characters who matter a lot to Emma, Ray, Dawn, and Gilda, but never really matter to the reader. And this only got worse once Emma arrived at Goldie Pond, once all these other people got introduced and joined the team. But this time here, this 1 year and 7-month gap in the story, it represents a great opportunity to learn more about some of these characters, to get to know them like Emma does. That way we'd have this personal, deepened connection to the people she's most afraid of losing. Beyond that, it feels weird that a lot of these characters never do anything. I mean, like, they're all here, so shouldn't they have something to say, something to do? Shouldn't their will and personalities have some impact on the plot? Well, here, some of them could have been developed to the point that they would impact the plot. But no, that's not going to happen. So yeah, this time skip's a problem. But what happens next? Well, Emma and the gang immediately go and find the answer they needed to reach the entrance and make a new promise. As such, we don't really get to see the process they go through to solve this. From the reader's perspective, they just kinda figure it out, which feels pretty anticlimactic and disappointing. But then things start to get a bit spicy, because the bunker is under attack. Andrew has found them and he's out to kill. Once again, the characters are trapped in a fairly isolated, small-scale area with an enemy closing in on them. So naturally, I asked myself, how will they get out of this? What sort of plan will they use? What will they do? But no, that doesn't matter, because the narrative structure has changed. Before, we were generally told what pieces were in play, and then we got to see what happened from there. However, now, something happens, and then we're told about the pieces in play. For example, after Andrew breaks in, we learn that the children hid guns in each room to prepare, that there are various escape routes, that the shelter has 3 entry points, that there are 3 monitoring rooms, that they put fake footage in the rooms to trick any intruders, that there are emergency doors that can be shut, that there's a labyrinth of tunnels attached to the shelter, and so on. You get the point. There's a lot of stuff we didn't know. Now, I'm not saying we need to know every detail before the attack begins, but if we don't know enough details, then anything can be revealed when convenient to the plot. So even reasonable plans or measures end up feeling a bit contrived. As such, this section lacks tension because if we don't know the proper context or stakes at this point, it's difficult to get invested in the conflict. It just feels like whatever happens will happen, which is in stark contrast to the first carefully crafted arc in this series. Due to the time skip, I also didn't feel emotionally invested. Logically, I can understand that the shelter is important to the kids and that leaving is hard, but I only understand it on that logical level. I don't feel it because I haven't seen them do much of anything here. On top of that, Andrew doesn't feel like a proper threat because, again, I know so little about who he really is or about how he even made his way here. This only gets worse once Hugo blows up the shelter and dies with Lucas. Now, I'll get this out of the way. I was upset when Hugo died. Even if I still wasn't invested in most of these kids, I was invested in Hugo's journey as a character. But I wasn't just upset because this was sad. I was upset because it felt like I'd missed a massive chunk of his growth. Like I didn't quite know who he was now. After all, he went from a traumatized man who had cast aside his own humanity to someone who would give his life for these children. However, we never really saw him with his so-called new family. Again, there's an emotional disconnect between me and the character here, between what I've seen and what his most important experiences are. Because of that, his death felt a lot weaker than I would have expected. But whatever, what's done is done. How do the characters react to this? Well, Emma's pretty devastated. She's worried she's made the wrong decisions, that she could have done something to stop Hugo and Lucas from sacrificing themselves. Meanwhile, Ray tries to keep everyone in line. He tells them they can't go out and look for Hugo or Lucas because someone might still be out there looking for them. However, in an unexpected but welcome moment, some of the kids slip away to go look. And then a couple kids are killed by Andrew, who somehow survived the explosion. But Oliver shoots him, and everyone else is safe for the time being. What follows this moment is super strange to me. See, by now, we've been told time and time again that Emma is going to protect everyone, that she doesn't want to ever lose another member of her family again. And here, it happened. She lost them. She lost Lucas and Hugo and these other kids. So what do we get? One panel of her looking upset. Sure, I'd accepted that I wasn't going to care about the vast majority of these people, but I at least cared about Emma. So because of her, I could give a bit of a crap. But what happened? How does she move on so fast? At first, I thought that she was just holding back, trying to keep her emotions inside so that she could appear strong for these other kids. But in my opinion, we never properly return to this moment. She never truly grieves like I would have expected her to. It really just seems like she's moved on and sorted out most of her emotions just like that. Up until now, she's definitely been a strong character. But now, she's starting to come across as invincible. Half-baked. That's probably the best way to describe this arc. Actually, that's probably too much. Someone popped this loaf in the oven for 2 minutes, tore it out of there, and said, "Yeah, that's done." At the end of this arc, I was just so disappointed. To the degree that I thought maybe I'd messed up on my end. Maybe I'd skipped a few chapters, missed a volume, fallen asleep midway through something, or forgotten important details. But no, I hadn't. This was just where the story had gone now. And I definitely was not liking it. Following the Covetodala arc, we get the King of Paradise arc, and, well, I'll admit it. It pulled me back in a bit. Here, Norman makes his grand return, but despite still connecting deeply with Emma, Ray, and the other kids, he's a different person now. See, he got sent to an experimental facility called Lambda, where kids, well, to say the least, they didn't have a good time. However, a man named Smee saved him. From there, Norman became the new Minerva, and he's got a plan to save the humans. Kill every single demon. However, Emma doesn't want to kill all the demons, and she tells Norman as much. She's morally against it, and beyond that, she's met Sanju and Mujika, who don't eat humans. And here, we get one of my favorite conversations in the series, where Emma learns from Norman that the so-called evil blood from Mujika could be given to other demons. After that, the demons wouldn't need to eat humans anymore to keep their human shape and intelligence. In other words, there wouldn't be a need for conflict because demons wouldn't be eating humans at all. But there's a problem. A number of aristocrats hunted down and killed most of these evil-blooded demons, and eventually made the promise that certain children would be raised on farms and eaten. When Emma hears this, she's in disbelief. She can't even fathom why the aristocrats would do such a thing. Norman's reply? Emma, it shouldn't be surprising. Everyone acts in their own self-interest. Of course, that's not how every single person is, but this is how the world works. Not everyone thinks in a kind, selfless way like you. Beyond that, Emma went into this conversation thinking that Mujika's existence might stop Norman from killing all the demons, but Norman's takeaway is so different. He thinks that they need to kill them because, well, who would just stand by and watch while he annihilates all the other demons? How could they ever forgive that? Norman really just sees them as a hindrance to his plan. But even this isn't enough. He goes on to point out another issue with Emma's perspective. After all, she thinks they can give out Mujika's blood and then demons just won't eat people anymore and it'll all be great, it'll all be fine. Humans and demons, there's no need for conflict. But Norman sees it a much different way. He says, even if there's no need, if they want to eat us, they'll come for it. Here's what I love about Norman in this section. What he's saying is backed up by the narrative itself. I mean, we've seen demons who hunt just for the thrill of it, and Sanju himself is waiting for the moment where he can do just that. We've also seen plenty of characters who act in their own self-interest. All in all, Norman serves as a great antagonistic force because even if his conclusion of killing all the demons is bad from a moral perspective, he's working with more complete facts than Emma. That way, he serves as a challenge to Emma merely by realizing that the world is more complex than Emma wants to admit. In other words, he's showing how naive Emma really is. In the next arc, what Norman does following this too, that's what really shapes him into an antagonist for Emma, which is not a position I ever expected to see him in. Because he lies to Emma. He has no intention of going along with her plans. In fact, he lies to Dawn and Gilda too, asking them to go and find Mujika and Sanju to keep them safe. However, he really still just wants to kill them, to eliminate an uncertain element that could ruin his plans. Now, this arc isn't perfect. Far from it. In fact, it carries over some pretty big issues from the previous arc. The biggest problem? Well, during the Kavutadala arc, Emma and Ray spent less than a chapter in the demon's land. We basically saw none of the demons' everyday lives. Considering that seeing all that is a big part of why Emma is so against killing the demons, it sure would have been nice to see that. This even gets worse when Emma reveals that she doesn't want to kill the demons and the kids are all like, oh yeah, you're right, there's Sanju and Mujika, and we don't really want to kill them all either. We shouldn't have been excited for that before. Silly us. And Ray looks at them and says, well, you guys didn't go out and see the demons in town. When I read that, I couldn't help but laugh because here, the writer is confirming how important it was to see that stuff, and yet we didn't see it either. Despite all this though, the potential of this conflict is awesome. It pulled me back into the series when I was not expecting to care anymore. Norman's placement in this arc is brilliant. He represents such an incredible threat to Emma's ideals. After all, she's always wanted to avoid conflict with demons, but now war seems unavoidable. Beyond that, Norman is out to kill her friends. Most importantly though, Norman is the perfect challenge for Emma because despite all these things, he's still family. So what's Emma going to do when there's no good option? When a precious member of her family is the very thing she'll need to fight in order to find peace? But that's not going to happen. No, from here on, the Promised Neverland is going to choose a different way to solve its conflicts. See, the story will do a really good job of making you think Emma's going to get challenged, but she won't be. No. Things are going to be easy. One way or another, the story will find a way to twist itself around so that no matter what, no matter how unlikely or weird or out of nowhere, Emma will succeed in almost everything. Basically, from now on, we're playing on easy mode, folks. Now I think you know what time it is. It's that part of the video where I give more examples than you could ever want, but I'm really trying to make a point here, okay? I reread this whole thing just to make this video. Please stick around. Please stay till the end. I love you. Otherwise known as list time. Let's go through some of these chapters. Chapter 130. When Emma reveals that she doesn't want to annihilate the demons, every single person here ends up agreeing with her. Not just in the moment either. They will never go against her. In fact, many of them will help her. But just before this, they were all celebrating that they get to kill the demons. Having them get convinced so quickly, it just makes them into such non-entities for the story. Like they're just there to get moved wherever the plot demands. Of course, I don't mind some of them getting convinced, but it feels ridiculous that before this, none of them had considered Sanju and Mujika. Really, Emma was the only one to think of that. I don't know, I would have assumed that some of these kids thought of that but just went, screw them. I want to kill all the demons, you know? Hate's a powerful thing. But no, they just hadn't thought about it, I guess. I don't know. Whether you agree this makes sense or not isn't really the point. My big point is that, boy oh boy, was that easy. Chapter 144. Every single one of these Lambda people Norman sends to kill Mujika and Sanju gets a seizure at the same time, meaning that Mujika and Sanju get an easy way out of this conflict without killing anyone. Just how Emma would have liked it. Chapter 154. In the previous chapter, Emma ran into the Queen's chamber, found Norman there, with all these dead demons, and it seemed like it was too late. On top of that, Norman's also unleashed a poison upon all of these demon civilians, and they're being eradicated as they speak. But fortunately, Emma's able to convince him that he was really wrong and he wasn't doing the right thing because now she's made a promise and they can go a different route. Personally, I didn't really buy this. I didn't believe that Norman would so quickly change his mind just because Emma talks to him and has a new promise. But maybe you think that's fine. That's kind of fair. They mean a lot to each other. They're super close. But here's where the bigger problem comes in. Norman isn't the only one who gets convinced. Every one of his confidants is convinced too. Which, just... how? We've already established that they aren't going through with this plan just because they think it's feasible. They're going through with it because they hate demons. We had a whole section dedicated to establishing that. To me, that prior scene, the purpose of it was to show that just making a new plan, just having a new option, wasn't enough. There was something else to overcome here, and that thing was seething hatred. But no, they all just talk it out a little bit. They're quickly convinced, and that's that. And once again, characters don't seem to have a proper will of their own. Instead, they bend to Emma's will, in a direction that helps her realize her goal her way without sacrificing any of her ideals, no matter how half-baked or slapped together her plans are to reach them. This conflict just feels so flat. Again, she overcomes an obstacle, and it's weirdly easy. Chapter 156. After the Queen reawakens due to her second core, she's about to finally kill one of Norman's people, maybe even Emma or Ray, but just in the nick of time, Sanju and Mujika show up and save the day. It's that easy. Chapter 158. Despite coming back to life, the Queen still dies from poison, which isn't unreasonable or anything like that, but it's just another anticlimactic moment. Chapter 159. Before, it was importantly established that Sanju wants to hunt humans again. Now though, he's changed his mind. Again, not exactly unreasonable, but pretty anticlimactic. It's yet another thing that's been established as a challenge or obstacle for Emma that conveniently gets brushed aside. Chapter 160. All the way back in chapter 138, we learn that Aish was raised by a demon and that she hates Norman and his people because they killed her father. There, she said she was only cooperating to survive the situation, and we get a panel of her thinking, "I'm going to kill all of you." Basically, she's out for blood. But not really. Because in this chapter, she runs into Norman, and, well, he's changed his mind and she's not going to do anything to him or any other people from here on out. So a conflict gets set up, but once again, it just doesn't go anywhere. Chapter 167. After everyone returns to Norman's hideout, we learn that Peter Rattray is already there and that he's taken all the kids back to Gracefield. This is obviously a big problem, but Emma just says, "Let's go!" and everyone jumps on board. Once again, we don't get any of the characters' plans for how they'll deal with this highly dangerous area full of powerful enemies who are waiting for them. Instead, we're fed info about their plan as they complete it, giving the sense that anything could happen because we don't know enough information about this conflict. Besides, the plan won't really matter anyway because, as Ray says when something goes wrong, no matter, shoot the crap out of them. Chapter 169. After successfully capturing Peter Rattray, it's revealed that the mothers and sisters are all there to back him up. But not really. Because Isabella's still there and she's turned against him and quickly convinced every single other person here to do the same thing. Every other character falls in line. People just don't really seem to have a mind of their own. And the conflict is neatly wrapped up, despite the fact that there really wasn't much of a good plan going into this. Chapter 171. In the Demon City, Sanju and Mujika are about to be executed due to crimes that Peter Rattray has fabricated. So maybe his actions will have some effect. But no, don't be silly. Another unexpected element will swoop in, because Lewis is back, baby. Yeah, that Lewis. All the way back in Goldie Pond. Now, I'll be fair. The story did give us a couple hints that he was still alive. After all, no one found his body in Goldie Pond, and he's related to the Queen, so hey, maybe he has two cores too. But really, he comes right now, without us seeing him for so long? Also, here's the real kicker. He's not just back, he's back to help Emma and the gang by showing that the evil blood is good. This all begs the question of, where have you been, buddy? Why did you change so much? Last time we saw you, you were kind of a psycho nut job who ruined everyone's lives and just killed people for fun. But, okay, now I guess you're doing something else. You're doing your own thing. Would have been good to see that, but whatever, we're moving along. Chapter 175. Don't worry, folks, Lewis isn't done yet, because he wants to instate Mujika as queen. From most of the demons' perspective, she's a nobody, but everyone in the demon crowd, they love it. They want Mujika as queen. Hell yeah. Oh, also, Lewis is abolishing the farms. Chapter 177. For a long time now, Ray has been taking a big backseat to Emma. Emma's been the star of the show. But then Isabella gets stabbed by a random demon and she collapses down and everyone's crying over her. So Emma's chatting with her, and Emma keeps chatting with her, and Emma keeps chatting with her. And then finally Isabella calls over Ray so that they can talk a little bit. And then she dies. Isabella dies. Now, the fact that I'm complaining about this might seem kind of weird at first. After all, I've been complaining about easy mode. Someone dying isn't exactly easy mode, and this isn't what Emma wants. But in a way, this makes it easier for the story to fall in line with Emma's clear-cut vision of the world, where everything can be good. Because Isabella's kind of a messy character. I mean, would everyone really forgive her in the long run? She's done some pretty terrible stuff. So getting rid of her? Oh, that's easier. Then we don't have to deal with the moral complexity of having her around. So, yeah, she's dead now. The only casualty in this whole Return to Gracefield section of the story. Chapter 179. The human world is receptive to these kids, despite the fact that we'd seen this idea floating around multiple times that, hey, it might not be so good there. So yeah, before I thought they were like establishing that there would be some problems here, but no, it's not. The world's really good. They're going to be really nice to these kids. Fair enough, I guess, but kind of anticlimactic again. Chapter 181. The final chapter. We're here, folks. We made it. It's the final one. In order to make the promise, Emma had to make a sacrifice. The sacrifice she made was that she never see her family again. So her memories have been wiped, but all the other kids are on the hunt for her. Eventually, even though they need to search a whole big world for her, they find her by just going from place to place over the course of a chapter. Emma doesn't recognize them, but feels like she's supposed to be with them. If this was her sacrifice, come on, couldn't Mr. Scribbles have stopped this whole thing from happening? The whole meetup, the fact that they happen to run into each other and that she's like, oh man, I don't remember you, but I feel like I'm supposed to be with you. I know it was supposed to make me feel emotional, but I couldn't just help but go, what is this? How is this happening? We established that this wasn't supposed to be allowed, but couldn't Emma have been locked up in the demon world still? That would have kept them separated, or I don't know, how about if all the other kids forgot about her too? Had their memories wiped? I'm just saying, it seems like there could have been a lot of better ways for Mr. Scribbles to deal with this whole promise thing. But really, I don't even know why I'm asking questions at this point. Whatever's gonna happen is gonna happen, and that's that. So, that's it. That's the end of the Promised Neverland. Overall, it had gone from a carefully considered mind game to a series of stapled together coincidences, contrivances, and easy mode conflicts slapped on top of each other. It went from a series with a good dose of moral complexity and ambiguity to a simple, clear-cut lesson about forgiveness that doesn't even feel remotely earned. It went from a series where many people had impact and agency to a series where the only one left who mattered was our Lord and Savior, Emma. And as Emma somehow reunited with the family she was never supposed to see again, I closed that final page and came to a simple realization. I didn't really care anymore. In fact, I didn't think I'd be making this video because I was just whatever, I don't know. But then I wanted to reread it, hoping that I had missed something. because I don't want to undersell what the story was. It was really good. I liked it a lot. I kind of loved it. But it had somehow turned into this thing. This thing that barely even resembled itself. And I'd just fallen so far out of love with the series that even an ending so disappointing, so cheap, hardly fazed me. It just made me go, oh, okay, I guess. That's that. And all in all, I just had to accept a simple fact. The Promised Neverland had lost me somewhere along the way.